Hello everybody. So today it's the 7th lesson and this is focused on how technological developments shape the society and the economy. Just broad ideas. The first point that I would like to make is that of technological revolutions. I suppose all of you already know about the Industrial Revolution that started about 250 years ago. That's when really industrialization started in what we know today to be the developed world. But we have actually since then a series of cycles of revolutions, technological revolutions, that induced several techno-economic paradigms that were reshaping the society. And I'd start with describing a bit what these are, because this is our main framework for the discussion. And a direct link of this is with the transition management theory that you remember, with the multi-level perspective, where you have the establishment and the landscape along with the niche developments. Well, this is about that. These revolutions actually mark the changes, the main changes that happened in the landscape and in the establishment. So the first one actually started in 1771, and that generated the development of a new way of life, a new lifestyle, the so-called Victorian type of living. And it started with the establishment of mills that generated an explosion in industry, especially in textiles. And associated with this are the canals that started to be open all along the British Islands and then along the continent, the European continent too. This is the famous so-called Industrial Revolution. After about 60 years, something else important happened. The age of steam, coal, iron and railways started, and this is when the engines, the machines started to take over the economy basically. And it started in Britain, like with the Industrial Revolution before it, but spread very much to the European continent and the USA. Of course, it started with a steam engine in 1829. After about half a century, then something else started. Is the age of heavy engineering, steel, electricity. Basically, electricity is what triggered a new type of development. And now the country shifted. Here we talk more about USA and Germany overtaking Britain. But also spreading to the entire European continent and to the world too, to other parts of the world. And this corresponds to a new lifestyle. This is the so-called and well-known La Belle Époque. It's the age of cosmopolitan living. It's the beginning of globalization, actually. And like with the previous age, it impacted especially the middle class. So until here we have three revolutions which impacted very much the middle class, and it resulted in an unprecedented development of urban type of living by comparison with the previous more rural type of living. Now a big change also happened at the beginning of the 20th century, 1908, with the Ford plant in Detroit. This is when the age of oil, automobile and mass production started, and it triggered the beginning of the American way of life. And unlike the previous ways of life, this spread not only to the middle class, but also to the working classes around the world. This is why this American way of life, so-called American way of life, is so successful. It corresponds so much to everybody, basically. Not only middle class and working class, but American way of life actually resulted from a combination of cultures. Is not English, is the famous melting pot, all the people there. So it was much more representative of the world, so from there it spread. And then more recently, after all this big industrialization and crossing through world wars and all that happened, in 1971 something very important happened, which was the announcement of the Intel microprocessor. It's the start of the age of information and telecommunication. It started in USA, then spreading to Europe and Asia, especially. Now, we are still in this age, and now the discussion is what is the next age, and I especially gave here some years to mark, but historically, the limits of these ages. But actually, each age is a consequence of the previous ages. So the germs of the of an age, of an industrial age, of a technological age, are already growing in the previous age. So right now, what is very strongly developing is a sort of, let's guess, along with other people, it's not just my guess, the age of biotechnology, bioelectronics, nanotechnology, and new materials. That is very much related to the age of information telecommunication, of course. And now it's basically the whole world. It's the whole world connected with smartphones and all that. I don't even need to go into those details. But these things, biotechnology, new materials, smart technology and all that, are preparing the way for a sustainable way of life. Also because we are global, we have to be responsible together about the resources that are limited on this planet. So we don't know exactly how this will look like, this new age, but we know it will be very much influenced by information technology and information technology and biotechnology. So here I put like, okay, we're about to start this age of new age, the sixth technological revolution, but it will take some time until we will be able to look back and retrospectively say, actually this age started in that year, that year. For the moment, we just say about now. And the technologies that are very much highlighting this new way of life that we are beginning to develop now is, for example, the mapping of the human genome that happened a few years ago, Facebook, especially its impact, big impact, the Internet of Things, 3D printing, big data, things like that. I will make more suggestions a bit later. If you want to read more about that, to understand, you can check on this link that I give here. And the first link is the paper describing this technological revolutions, and the second, actually, it's also a video that discusses a bit this these revolutions by Carlota Perez, who is the famous academic that actually developed this framework of technological revolutions. Now, the importance of these technological revolutions is in that it generates a paradigm shift. That means a change in the direction of change and across society. That means it's not just an increasing of diversity of technologies or methods. It actually changes, a revolution like that changes the predominant technology. That technology that actually sets the context for all the other technologies, how they can function, today or not, and for the future technologies. So that is an important aspect, and I will explain in a second what this means. So what happens is that this new paradigm is setting a new, is generating a set of new technologies and infrastructure. And along with that, come the organizational principles, institutions, and all that, so that the industries that existed so far modernize. And this results in a big jump in innovation and the productivity potential for every industry across society and for all organizations. Now, why is this a paradigm shift? Because every shift like that, it's an enormous boost of wealth creation potential, which enables completely new things that didn't exist before. So it changes things in the ways of production, in the ways of working, in transport and communications, and in general it generates a new way of living. And at the human level, what happens is that each generation that comes along with these changes sees itself as an embodiment of progress and comfort compared to the previous old-fashioned and backward generation. It's always like that. And the last point, very important, is that these new patterns that are emerging along with the new technologies and infrastructures create something that enable the spread of it along society, and that is cheap products and services. It just enables a lot of cheap and desirable products and services so that they spread. You see, so the change is not generated by the best high-tech, it's generated by that high-tech that technology that manages to have an impact in the life of most people. And with that, I can go to the next slide and talk a bit about the companies. Okay, we have the technologies I mentioned earlier, the big revolution started by Ford, and with mass production and all that. So we have big companies that are part of the establishment. What is happening with this establishment during these revolutions? This graph is showing how long the large companies live historically. So this S&P 500 index is just the first 500 biggest companies in the world, and they measure here the average life time of a company. And what you see is that basically right now, and I found this news on Twitter, so I copy-pasted it here a bit. The interesting information here is that the lifetime, the turnover of big companies in society is accelerating. In other words, about half of the companies in this biggest 500 that existed in the year 2000 don't exist anymore. So this means a high turnover at about half of them every 15 years, and it's accelerating. So this means that these dominant companies are living less and less, and are faster and faster replaced by the new ones, which makes a bit sense, because the society becomes more diverse, it's more interrelated, so I mean, all the countries and companies across the globe are more interrelated. So you have to take into account this when you think about creating a change.